have Tower Bridge. So we're getting ourselves closer to the bridge, and then we're going to turn the boat round. So don't worry about trying to get a photo just yet. We will turn the boat when we're closer to the bridge. And you will get another photo as you look to your right. As we approach the bridge, look off to your left. You get a photo opportunity and a nice view of the Tower of London. So the Tower of London to your left, open to the public as a tourist attraction. Of course, as it is a royal palace, it is closed at the moment. All royal palaces are closed, of course, for the mourning period. I would imagine, I'm not sure, but I would imagine that the Tower of London will reopen Tuesday. I would imagine 20th of September, the day after the Queen's funeral, the late Queen's funeral. I would imagine, that's just a guess to be honest, but I would imagine the next time they open the castle, the day after the funeral. It is a brilliant place to visit, so if you're still around next week, try your best to stop inside. Before the London Eye, this was the most popular tourist attraction, and it's well worth it. If you haven't been in there already, try your best next week to stop inside. Yeah, of course, most famously used for torture, imprisonment and execution. So a famous punishment took place to your left. Before the City Cruises dinner boat gets there, look to your left, a traitor's head. That was what happened to friends of royalty having their head chopped off. So the Tower of London has been many things. It is one of London's most iconic sights. Tower Bridge lit up of an evening time. At the moment, lit up in purple as well, the regal colours, lit up in purple. To tackle the piracy, they started up the Thames River Police. And as I mentioned, coming through the bridges, the Thames Police, they were started up in 1798. They couldn't carry on executing pirates, so they had to try and tackle the problem. And that's why they now started up the Thames Police. The last person to suffer the punishment, the grace of Wapping, was the pub, not the pub, but a pirate, named after the pub to your left, named after the pirate, Captain Kidd, Captain William Kidd, a Scottish pirate, the last person to suffer the punishment, the grace of Wapping. Don't know if I made sense there. I know I didn't at the end. Piracy, basically. Famous on the river. And to your right, the area, this is now Robber Hive. If you're from America, you might be interested in the area. The church to your right, St. Mary's Church. Buried in that church, Christopher Jones. He was the captain of the pilgrim ship, the Mayflower. And there is a pub named after the ship. There to your right. It's called the Mayflower, and the American flaglet flies on the front. Now in 1620, the Mayflower, the ship, set sail from the pub, leaving this area, going down the Thames, round the coast of the country, stopping along the way, picking up the Pilgrim Fathers, going off to what you now know as the United States of America. So they believe the famous journey, the voyage started here to your right, in this area, Robber Hive, the pub named after the ship, and the captain of the ship buried in the church here at Robber Hive. Now on your left, you've got all these old warehouses now, and in between them there's a white fronted pub. This pub is called the Prospect of Whitby. It was a notorious pub years ago. This pub was built in 1515, so it's the oldest pub on the tidal part of the Thames. When it was built, this pub was called the Pelican, but this pub had a nickname, the Devil's Tavern. It was nicknamed after the people that went into the pub. So this is where you found the pickpockets, the thieves, the murderers, pirates, ladies of the night. This is the pub they would have used. The area outside of the pub, they used to call it the Devil's Punch Bowl, because this is where they said the pirates would come, anchor their ships, they would row ashore, rob the buildings, the docks and the barges, they'd get back on their ships and they'd disappear off the sea. And you can imagine how easy it would have been with no police force, no CCTV. So that is why it became such a big problem, piracy on the Thames. And they came here to these areas because all around you, this is where the expensive cargo would have been stored, especially to your left, in the East End. The East End of London runs from Tower Bridge to Canary Wharf. And years ago, there was docks in the East End. You had the London docks and St. Catherine's dock. And at these two docks is where you found the ivory. You'd have had ivory tusks laid on warehouse floors. You'd have had alcohol and tobacco, gold and silver, spices from all over the world. All the expensive cargo stored in the East End. So you can imagine this is where the pirates came. They stole from the docks and they would disappear off the sea. The sandy coloured buildings to your left with the white arched windows, these buildings, they would have been prisons. They used to hold criminals in these buildings. Here to your left. The prisons in this country became overpopulated and they didn't know what to do with the criminals, so they would send them away. They were held in these buildings. Criminals were then loaded onto ships. Thousands of criminals were loaded onto ships and they were sent away to other areas of the Commonwealth. Originally, criminals, they would have been sent to America. The Americans, they gained independence and they put a stop to it. And eventually, criminals were sent to Australia to live. Punishment. That's what they did to criminals years ago, sent them to Australia to live. They wouldn't call that a punishment today. It's not much of a punishment, is it, being sent to Australia to live? But that is what they used to do to criminals years ago. See how close we can get now to the river wall on the high tides? We hug the bend as we get round. You keep out the tide. The tide is still rising. The river level is still coming up. Keeping to the bend, hugging the corner, you keep away from the tide. Because the strongest tide is in the opposite shore, where the tide rushes into the bends. So we hug the bend here and we can get a bit quicker, a bit more speed out of the boat, get you to Greenwich a little bit faster. Because the tide, of course, does slow the boat down. On the river, it's a fast and a powerful